Crime Book Club. We are live on Friday night with Duncan at Peberdy, and we're going to be talking about Lansdowne House. I nearly called you Lansdowne House, which would have been an excellent start to the evening.
Yeah, it would.
So say hello and tell everybody a little bit about the book. And did you bring a copy with you to show off?
I did.
Oh, that was very organised of you.
Yeah. No, you don't want the plot like you had yesterday. You want
You can say that. You can say whatever you'd like to say.
Okay. I tell you what I want to say about it, because in fact, we just in our little preamble, you said this is a really difficult book to categorise,
It really is.
And I've called it a COVID-19 mystery because I was talking to a marketing lady and she said, if you tag it on something like that, it'll do really well, But it's far more than a murder mystery. I mean, it's a circle of life story, isn't it? Where it starts and where it ends is pretty much in Lansdowne House, the actual country house itself, and it's a story about two half sisters who, when the story starts, are infants and they don't know each other because they've got different mothers, and there's lots of circumstances behind that, and they learn of each other's existence just as they're about approaching their 40th birthday, so 40 years later, clearly. And one of them, Michelle, has lived a life of absolute luxury. The father's owns Lansdowne House, extremely wealthy, got his own company, so privately educated, skiing trips and all those types of things. And whereas the other one, Tina, single parent, almost a hidden daughter, which actually was a thought for a title at one point. She's as a child she was fine, but as an adult she very much lived a hand-to-mouth existence. So when they learn of each other's existence, and Michelle, who has everything, doesn't want anything to do, doesn't want to believe that she has a half sister, then the jealousy set in, and the life's unfair, and it's very close to home, and that sets off a chain reaction of not so much from Tina herself, but from her partner Alfie, who thinks this is desperately unfair, that the other sisters got everything. They've got the same father who's fabulously wealthy, got enough money for two of them. He thinks they should have a bit of that. They should have a bit of that action, and so that sets off this chain of events that is basically starts out as a fraud. And I'm not going to obviously tell people what that is, but it'd be interested for your take on it, whether you thought that was quite clever or too far-fetched or whatever. But anyway, it sets that off. But as that, and in fact, that was, as I wrote it, that was what I thought it was going to end up. I thought it was going to be this fraud. I didn't know it was going to go beyond a fraud, because guess what? It's called a murder mystery, and it spirals down, and there is a murder, and that culminates. Culminates in, so it starts in 1977, it culminates in 2021 in July, very much still in the middle of COVID, and COVID provides an opportunity to hide a body in plain sight, and again, that'd be interesting. And I've throughout those 40 years, I have tried to weave in real life events into that. So, we've got, it starts not right at the start, but close to the start. We've got the Queen's Silver Jubilee party. 10 years later, we've got the first conviction, which was based on DNA evidence, which was Colin Pitchfork. It really happened. It happened at that time, so we weaved that in. And in fact, that was really key to the plot, in that enabled somebody else to think, DNA. This gives me an opportunity to prove something. And so there's and we lived through Brexit, and we lived through COVID lockdowns and all the restrictions that has. So it isn't just a murder mystery, it's circle of life. It's about envy and revenge, and it's historical as well.
It absolutely is. There's so many different things that you've woven through it. That must have been a help and a hindrance in different ways, because in a way it gives you a kind of a timeline to work to.
Yes, it does. But the hindrance, I think, is that most people, whether they're booksellers or readers, most people want to pigeonhole something and say that is X. It's a murder mystery. It's it's science fiction. It's a rom-com. It's it fits into a pigeonhole, and it doesn't fit into a pigeonhole.
No, it doesn't.
And so with hindsight, and maybe there were things that if I was doing it again I would change, but certainly it was written during lockdown, when I had plenty of time, hence why it sort of ended right in that period. and you know, using Google for research and everything as the timelines went, that was a big help as well. But yeah, to bring those elements in, I think, you know, we're um, yeah, it certainly made it interesting to write. You know, there's one point that I mentioned. You know, could it have been called the hidden daughter or something like that? You know, because at one point the daughter that doesn't have everything, um, and she's off in Ireland for the best part of 10 years, where they have very little, you know, and the alternative to having that sort of very meager lifestyle for those years was to be a forced adoption, which again was a massive issue over in Ireland during that period. So again, that's
Yeah.
historical as well. And you know, the nurses in the hospital wanted to, you know, take the baby away and give it up to adoption because the baby was born out of wedlock, which, you know, back in the 1970s was still very, very taboo in Ireland. Although the baby wasn't born in Ireland, because the Catholic parents in England sent their mother away to be out of sight to have her illegitimate child.
Yeah, it's there are so many different things that throw so many different lights of. I mean, I'm 40, so this book is kind of over the course of my life, and some of the things that it's made me remember that maybe weren't so pleasant. It's quite a difficult read for somebody who is the same age as the women involved.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
We've got some hellos here. So Kaz has said hello, and Donna's saying sorry, football's on.
Well, yeah,
We
we
did
thought
wonder before we
we
went live whether people would be watching the football.
we did, and yeah, and I think, you know, was it help, was it hindrance? You mentioned. I definitely think not being able to pigeonhole it accurately into one genre has made it more difficult to market, and interestingly, I mentioned that I did a book club a couple of months ago with a group of very nice ladies who treated me very well, and their comments were really interesting. They said it's too soon for COVID. If somebody hadn't have said, right, this is what we're reading, they wouldn't have picked it up and read it, and because of the COVID thing. But actually, they all were glad they read it and they enjoyed it, and they said it's not really a COVID murder mystery. It just ends in COVID with a murder. So
Yeah, you have kind of hit upon a very
yeah,
right point.
yeah,
A lot of people will not pick something up that was written about COVID. However, you are right, it just ends during COVID. COVID becomes part of the storyline that's
yeah.
it's hard to discuss, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, I don't know at what point these other things that I'm about to mention kick in, but you know, there's plenty now of fiction that's based on 9/11. There's plenty of fiction based now, but by some very famous authors, on the Grenfell fire.
Mm.
You know, and they're Grenfell, what, 5, 6 years ago? It's obviously pre-COVID, but that sort of time, so it hasn't you know, taken that long. And also, you know, and also one of the interesting things about one of the Grenfell ones is it was used as a way to raise funds for the Grenfell community. Because people, I don't know if you know, I can't remember, was it Philip Pullman? Somebody wrote a book and you could pay to have your name as one of the characters,
Right, okay.
and so it raised money that way.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that ambiguity, if you like, it has made it more difficult to market, definitely.
I should say hello to Leslie and Laura as well. So, and Kaz has actually asked, does it not fit in a pigeonhole, make it harder to market, which you touched on. But how did you decide exactly where to pitch it?
Uh, oh gosh, I mean, a very good friend of mine is a marketing lady, but not in the book world, in the
Mm.
commercial world, retail, and it sort of came out of a conversation about, you know, when she's looking to market something, she really wants something to hook it on, something really newsworthy and current, you know, that comes up, and that's really why I sort of decided to hook it onto the COVID thing. And you know, maybe it's too early for that to be the thing that really helps it. Maybe that won't be for another few years. Maybe in another few years, people go, oh, which was because it, you know, like there was somebody in America wrote a murder mystery with COVID in. Um, just a couple of, it was at the time I was ready to go to market with this, theirs was on Amazon, but it wasn't quite available, so I couldn't say the world's first, but certainly there was nothing else in the UK, and I thought that would help, but maybe it hasn't, that's
It's a
but
tricky one. I mean, reading about COVID wouldn't put me off.
no.
And I read an awful lot of things, as you know. I read a lot of books every year. It definitely wouldn't put me off picking a book up. I think I just go with whatever I like the look of, whatever I'm in the mood for.
And there isn't the in your face COVID. There isn't the real trauma about it. It obviously touches
Yeah,
on some points, and I've also, once the story's finished, in the acknowledgements and at the end, I made a few personal comments about COVID and how this wasn't trying to glorify it or anything
yeah.
else. It was just a fact. We were living through it, but certainly I you know I don't know whether you found that the way that I've managed to hide that murder in those circumstances seemed actually genuine. Somebody actually could do that. And I actually, I've had a couple of people say, bloody hell, somebody could have done that.
Maybe early on, yeah. Maybe not now.
Yeah. Oh
Thankfully,
no, so, no, no, not
you've not
now.
given anybody
No,
an idea that they could use
no,
now.
no, that's true.
But early on, yeah, it's believable. It wasn't
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. Good.
So Kaz said because obviously Kaz was going to be possibly covering for me this week, but she said you wrote a novel with lots of song titles in that she was looking at when she was researching you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, music's a big part of my life. I love music. I
Mm.
love going to things. And again, this is what, for me, as I was writing this, I like bringing in song titles and having things like that. I've got the first novel. That's the second novel. The first novel I wrote was Out of Control,
Mm.
and when I then published it under a slightly different name, I called it Euthanasia and published that just as a Kindle book. It has, I think it's 85. I think it's got 85 number one songs from the 1980s hidden in the text, and nobody's been able to find that meant nobody's been able to find them, because
I'm
sometimes
intrigued. I think I'd do quite well at that.
they like, there's half the song title will be at the end of a sentence, and then the first two words of the next sentence will be the first two of the last two of the song title. There's only a couple of those, and there's a couple of red herrings in there as well, because there's a few song titles were actually from like the early 90s, not from the 80s. So there's a couple of red herrings there, but I like that. Yeah. So when I just sort of finished the first draft before I actually went to press with it, and a few people read it for me. At that point, every title was a song title. And again, I've listed the main ones at the back of the book. Just have to quickly look at that. But at that point, the feedback that came back was the chapters are too long. You need to break them up and smaller, and especially for a Kindle market. And I was like, well, why didn't I think of that? It's a no-brainer, really. So there's a few more titles in there that aren't song titles, but a lot of them are. And that's just me having a bit of fun and trying to
Do you
make
have
them
a favourite one
fit.
that you've used?
Do I have?
A favourite one that you used?
No, they're all the songs that are in there, and there's about a dozen. They're all totally eclectic. There's some really sad songs. There's some really happy songs, and it's just sort of my mix there, really. So, and one of them, there's a song called "Time Stands" by an American guy called Nathaniel Rateliff, and that's something that actually came out of COVID as well, because
Mm.
about 6 months into COVID, when everything was locked down, there was a group of musicians in America who put on a concert to raise money for all the roadies and electricians and people who weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
And there's a place that I really want to go to now called the Red Rock Amphitheater in Colorado, and Nathaniel Rateliff sang just an this song acoustically in front of the auditorium with nobody in it, and it was like for me, It was hairs. I'd not heard the song
Mm.
before. It was hairs on the back of my neck. It was like,
Wow.
wow, it almost brought me to tears. Actually, it was just like, wow, and you couldn't see where the camera people were either. There obviously must have been some camera people or a couple of drones or something. And it was just like, and you can find that on YouTube. And it was just so I thought I've got to get that in, and so now that's going to cost me some money to go to Colorado at some stage. But those are things. But yeah, I like doing things like that. Not to be clever. It just makes it more interesting for me, really. I guess.
And there's
Yeah,
absolutely nothing wrong with that, especially if you're really enjoying the research,
yeah,
then that can
yeah,
only come through well.
yeah. Well, Euthanasia, say the one that's got 85 number one song titles from the 80s in. I mean, that's another murder mystery. And coming back onto the marketing thing, both of these books have been set where I live, and they both
Mm.
they include real people and real places. Um, the grumpiest man in Droitwich is actually mentioned by name in there. I did have his permission to do that, but yeah. So that certainly helped from the marketing locally. The first book did quite well um, through the local Smiths,
Mm.
but Smiths have gone even more corporate than they were 20 years ago, and just no, can't take anything that's not like centrally sent out and on our massive database and stuff. So it's a shame, but yeah. So the local aspect really helped, as did I don't know if readers are aware, but I did this as a fundraiser as well. So a couple of quid
Yeah,
for my
so tell us about the 50% to St Patrick's.
yeah. So it's 50% of the profits. Obviously, there's printing and there's
Of
postage and
course.
everything, and that equates to at least £2 a copy. Goes to St Richard's. It goes to St Richard's Hospice
St
in
Richard's,
St
sorry.
Richard's. Yeah,
Patrick
go,
is a character name. I've confused myself. It's a
that's
good
okay.
start, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. So it goes to the hospice. So just short of £1,000 raise so far. So it's not quite where we want it
That's
to
a
be.
substantial amount for a small charity.
Well, when I approached them about it and they agreed to do it and I had to sign a contract and everything, I said, "Go on then, tell me how much are you expecting to raise from this?" And they said, "Oh, 200 quid." That's we've had a few people do it, and we like maybe a few hundred quid. So
Mm.
I'm hoping that I'm. Funnily enough, I'm just talking to them again at the moment actually about doing a little push before Christmas and seeing if we can do something. And again, just again, because what we haven't mentioned so far on this call is that there's a key scene in the book that takes place in the hospice when it doesn't give much away, but when
I
the
think it's okay to mention this.
yeah, it's when the mother of Tina, who has nothing, when she is unfortunately having her last days of life in the hospice, that's where she finds out who her father is, and that's where this chain of reaction sets
Yeah.
off. And you you hear of you read all sorts of things about when people know that their time's about up, what different thoughts go through their head and what they might do. So that was the point where she decided you need to know who your father is.
Mm. Yeah, interesting conversation. And I don't think it gives anything away because I think it's a given that she's going to want to know who he is.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine. Um, we've got we've got a hey from Mills Pixie. Hi Mills. Um, and Donna saying, Sam, good to see you back. Thank you. It's really nice to actually be back and chatting about books. Can't imagine anything better for a Friday night. And Laura lives in Worcester, works in Droitwich, and would like to read the books. So
Ah,
um,
okay.
I really want to talk about Edward. Um, oh, you've written a real stinker. I absolutely cannot stand the man. He has no redeeming features. Couldn't find anything that I liked about. Well,
No, you
when you
can't.
look at him as a businessman, he seems to pay people well and looks after his team and has this outwardly nice persona, and people think he's a bit of a rogue, and but I just cannot stand
Yeah.
him. You've written that so well.
Thank you. Yeah. I think actually I think there's a lot of. I mean, I've been involved in technology sales most of my working life, and you come across people who not necessarily nice characters, but some I know some people are not very nice characters and don't want to share anything, don't pay people well, and unless they're forced into doing it for whatever reason. But there are also people like that who are astute enough to know that actually, if I pay these people well, I'm going to even earn even more myself. Because if they're
Yeah.
motivated and everything else, so I was trying to get that across as well, and also the fact that again, I was amazed when I researched it because I had in my head that who's going to go and work at a car dealership, which and then and so that's before the story starts. So in the around about the late 60s, early
Mm.
70s, and I was just gobsmacked to read that if you bought a Jaguar at that in those days, when you went in to pick your Jaguar up, you would have a couple of glasses of champagne before you drove off.
Which is, how bizarre is that?
Well, there was no drink driving then, was there? It was just, you know,
It's amazing the things,
different world.
looking back
Yeah,
through the book, the things that you've put in there that just made me think, I really hope we have come as far as I
yeah,
think we have away from
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, um, with what he does that sparks a story
Hmm.
without giving anything away. I mean, I don't think you get away with that in 2022.
I should bloody well hope
Well,
not.
I know, but that was of its time, and it doesn't excuse it. But
No.
that was unfortunately what life could have been like for people, and it was for a lot of people,
Mm.
a lot of young women, dreadful. So yeah, so he isn't based on anybody that I know. I don't know anybody like that, but I've read lots, seen lots, and just thought, I mean, to make it has to be that sort of character to make the story plausible.
Yeah, I agree.
It
I
can't be a nice.
agree.
If it's a
Makes me
nice
want
bloke,
to throw things at him.
yeah,
So yeah, can't have been an easy character to write, but you have got that balance.
yeah.
You've balanced him well in the way of
And he
to the
wants to be
reader,
he
he's a
wants to be he
certain
wants to be a
person.
show off and show people, which is why he buys the house and wants to show
Mm.
people that he's done well, you know, and that's fine. But not then thinking you're untouchable, which is what a lot of people in those days do. Um, which I guessing just I don't know why that just popped into my head, but Donald Trump esque.
Moving on. You have actually met a president, and I didn't
I have
Google who
actually,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
You were kind enough to send me some links to have a look at for different
yeah.
things, and I thought I purposely won't look up who it is so that I can
Okay,
just ask you who it was that you met.
yeah, I've had I mean, I'm a little bit older than 40, so I've had a little bit more experience. I ought to try and place a date for. I met George Bush Senior
Okay.
before he was president. He was actually vice president at the time, and my my background, what really got, and it sort of got me into writing a little bit as well, because I wasn't really interested in English lit at school, and really, and even today, I I sort of more drawn towards non-fiction books than fiction books. And if I like real things and that, so it's quite strange that I quite like writing these types of things. And anyway, my first full-time job out of college, because I didn't
Mm.
go to university, was for the Foreign Office, and I got sent over to Germany and worked in Munich for a couple of years. Then I found myself in Bonn, but that time I'd left because I'd met my now wife,
Mm.
and we were then living together at the time. And I got a job working for the American Embassy as an armed security guard. I mean, I don't know how I managed to get that job, but got this job. And so we used to have one of the places we had to work was at the ambassador's residence. So when Ronald Reagan came over, I didn't meet Reagan. Reagan came over for a summit with, I think it was Gorbachev in Bonn, and Vice President came over, and he stayed at the ambassador's residence. And so I was just on duty at the time, and the morning, he sort of breakfast time, out they just waltzed into the gardens to have a walk around the gardens.
Mm.
But they came and spoke to everybody. They came and shook your hand and asked you about yourself, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I know, because I recognized him straight away, obviously, and it was just like, wow. the vice president who became president wanted to shake your hand and as a security guard and talk to you and things. And there's not many people like that actually, and although certainly wasn't them. I mean, the ambassador who was there day in day out I worked there for a couple of years, never spoke to him once.
See, now I want to know if you'd ever write a book set there. That sounds quite exciting. I'm guessing day to day it wasn't always quite that exciting.
Well, no, I guess
Kind of
again,
sounds interesting.
yeah, the world's very different. If I go back to when I first went out there, I went over to Germany. I didn't speak any German, but I learned it quite quickly because back in 1985, that'll place my age. Back in 1985, no Sky Television, no real internet, so you couldn't, German television was all in German. There were no English language programs, so you either lived in a little bubble or you tried to get on. And I learned German. I actually the British Council out in Munich, and within those 2 years, I did my O level and my A level. I got pretty fluent, and I wanted to stay in Germany. I wanted, or a German-speaking country. I actually wanted to go to Vienna. Actually, it was where I wanted to try and get posted. And then I got posted back to London, and I said, I'm not going back to London, so I'll just leave and go and do something else, which was a little bit petulant. And I had quite a few bad experiences. I had a boss who
I'm sorry, I've just spotted a question from Laura that says, "Did you have Ferrero Rocher?" And it was all I could do not to guffaw.
Oh, it is. I love all chocolate. It's my least favorite chocolate. I really, Ferrero Rocher anyway. But I did have a boss who was married with kids and was a philanderer and a womanizer, and not unlike. Actually, now I've only just thought he isn't Edward, but he's not unlike him actually. And he was, but he was horrible. I worked for him. He was horrible, and I won't name him, obviously, and
Obviously not. No,
and
let's not get into any legal
legal
disputes.
stuff. Anyway, so I wanted to stay there, and I got really annoyed at what happened. So that's when I first put pen to paper to write something. I wrote this bit of fiction, and it was called "Who Will Let Me Spy." So think, and in those days, because you work for the Foreign Office and you sign the Official Secrets Act and anything like that, they can't stop you publishing things, but they can stop you, but they want to see it. So I sent it to them. This is after I'd left, and I knew it was no good because they sent it back and said, "Yeah, you can publish that if you want."
Oh, bless you.
So
it seems too good an opportunity to say, Laura Hamilton, with these questions, you are really spoiling us. Showing my age.
Yeah. So that was the first time I put pen to paper really in that respect. And
so, how much have you written that you haven't done anything with yet? Are there more things to be pulled out of the bottom drawer?
I've so potentially interesting to me, I actually wrote another murder mystery based on COVID before this one. So I did two.
Okay.
I did two really quickly, and it has a working title called Pilgrim Corner, and I basically say at the end of this book that if this book is likely successful, I don't know what success means. If it washes its own face and it pays for itself, then I'll probably do that one as well. But that one is about real people, and that could be quite. I'd have to be very careful publishing that because there's a lot of home truths about a lot of family members.
Oh, okay. Kaz can interview you about that one.
In-laws, yeah. So I don't know if that will see the light of day. And I've got something I'm working on at the moment, which isn't murder mystery. It's just a people one. And again, I don't know. I'm not. I'm only like 2 chapters in at the moment, and the title I've got for it at the moment, and it's about 4 couples, and it's like the title is "Why Would You Want to Renew Our Broken Wedding Vows?"
Which I'm assuming is quite descriptive of the story.
Yeah. And the idea is there's four couples, they've all got secrets, and any one of them could say that. Any one of the couples could say, why would you want to renew our? Because obviously there's a thing about renewing of wedding vows and stuff around it. Doesn't explain it very well. But then I think, well, the other title I got for it is a little bit is It Must Be Winter in My Heart, which is a song title from the Avett Brothers,
Yeah, I was
which
just
I
going to
really
say it's
like.
another song
Which
title.
which I really like. It must, and that's like, but actually they're not all cold and things. So I don't know. So that's possibly coming as well.
I think titles it's good to have a working title, but I
Yeah,
always find that something presents itself at some point. Something will just come to
yeah,
you, and then you won't need to have worried about it so much. Must be such an easy thing to get focused on and kind of lost in the thing of the title before the book's finished.
yeah. Because I think, I mean, I can't remember what I had as a working title for Lansdowne House. It certainly wasn't Lansdowne House to start with. Um, the Hidden Girl was a suggestion after it had been published from one of the book when I did a book club evening,
Hmm.
and they again, it was like the COVID thing, the title thing put some people off. um I don't know, it's very difficult, isn't it? And and also, what you start out with, because I'm very much like, here's an idea, so there's a title for that idea, and now let's work it through,
Hmm.
and everything. um but with this book, Lansdowne House, when I started writing it, there wasn't going to be a murder. It was just going to be the defrauding. That was
Right,
it.
right. And then
And,
that kind of presented itself. So
and
you
it
didn't
and
have
it
anything planned beforehand.
no, no, didn't have that planned beforehand at all. So yeah, it evolved, and that's the same with yeah, it's the same with the first novel I wrote. As that was being written, it changed, and the characters changed, and the plot changed, because you sort of, I suppose, you get under their skin a bit, don't you? And you start thinking, well, what would they have done, and you know
Mm.
how would that have come out? So because I'd had this idea, and I can't remember whether it ever had a title, but but the way in which the one sister tries to defraud the other, I'd had that idea before. So this that had probably had that idea 10 years ago as a theme, but the actual story wasn't about that so much. It was about what the effect was on the children. And in that particular, so not in this story, but in the idea that I had before, it'd be, well, this is what happens. This is how this fraud happens.
Yeah.
But because the couple go through it, and they, just as in this one, they don't tell their children. I'm not giving anything away. They don't tell children. But actually, under another circumstance, you can imagine how one child might harm themselves. And that was, and I hadn't explored exactly how that was going to happen, but
Mm.
it was going to be sort of the parents set off to do this because they're really, money orientated. That's the goal: get money and have a happy life. But actually, the collateral damage of then something happening to one of the children is like unintended consequences, and then
Which,
you
yeah, there would be a lot of in this book as well, unintended consequences. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
I want to ask you about the locations, because now you've mentioned, I mean, I knew from us talking before, I knew that you travelled a little anyway. So have you visited all of the locations that are in this book? Because obviously Shirley and Tina live in Ireland for 10 years,
yeah,
because she's an unwed mother, and she goes away to have the child, and her aunt and uncle give her the opportunity to live there with them,
yeah,
which I really liked that. I thought that was a really nice thing for the four of them.
yeah.
But obviously, we're looking at Ireland, we're looking at Droitwich, we're looking at Vegas, we're looking at um,
People,
Cornwall, we're
yeah,
looking at, yeah. So
Venice, uh,
Venice, thank you. I knew there was
and,
another V, but you've just said Vienna, and I knew it wasn't Vienna.
yeah,
So Venice.
and Avoriaz. I remembered. Yeah. So uh, I have been to all those places.
You have, okay.
Yeah, and again, it's I don't know how you found those particular parts. I've had some really negative comments about them, about the travel stuff was too much. I've had
Really?
and then I've had one of the things that this last book group, which was down in Bristol, that picked up on, they said they put an idea in my head, which is always a dangerous thing. They basically said we loved the travel bits. We absolutely love the travel bits and everything. It's quite and quite funny and quite quirky, and
Hmm.
you should write some of those. So yeah, no, they're all places I've been, and they're all places that I've been to Venice twice actually under different circumstances. One was a long time ago when I lived in Munich. I did a
Hmm.
couple of days, so it wasn't quite a day trip, but did a weekend down in Venice, and had another visit a few years ago. So that had an impact on me. The place that probably had the biggest impact on me was Vegas, because I desperately didn't want to go. I got no interest in
Hmm.
going into casinos or anything like that,
I don't
really.
fancy Vegas. I do fancy Venice. There's a lot of things that interest me about Venice, but I don't know. Vegas,
I'd go back
I
tomorrow.
don't think it's
I go,
my
but
kind of thing.
it was absolutely mad. It was really mad. But it was brilliant. I went on a stag do, and thinking, oh, why are we going there? And it was just brilliant. It was, yeah, really good. And in fact, there is one thing there's only one thing that I think I made up in the book, apart from obviously the murder that didn't really happen,
Well, yeah.
or the defraud. But there is a little bit of poetic license in what happens in Vegas with the wedding license.
Hmm.
That's not quite accurate. But no,
Right.
but
Okay.
and I usually, I ask when I do the book clubs and things, I ask people about it, and nobody sussed it. So I'm quite pleased about that.
I shan't say. Laura asked, "Oh wow, is it Patrick the Duck?" Now I do not know who Patrick the Duck is. Is this somebody that you are familiar with? A duck called Patrick?
Means nothing to me.
Okay, Laura, give us more of an explanation. And Kaz wants to know, would you make a graphic
I think
novel? Oh, go
Yeah,
on.
I think you mentioned Patrick actually. You said Patrick by
I
accident
did.
about something, so I
I
don't know what
said
Patrick. Yeah,
St. Patrick's rather than St. Richard's,
yes, you
when
did.
Patrick is
Yeah,
actually her dad,
well, yeah,
Shirley's dad.
yeah. So,
But
so
no, I
maybe,
do not know who Patrick the Duck is. I feel like we should know who Patrick the Duck is.
yeah, I don't know. I
Not
don't
sure.
know.
Kaz wants to know if you'd make a graphic novel of one of your books. Or if you wouldn't, would you be interested in seeing it being brought to life as a graphic novel by somebody else?
Ooh, I never thought about that.
It is quite a visual book in many ways,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think it
yeah,
would work very well being illustrated.
yeah, yeah. I think I don't know what I don't know what your feelings were about the length of it. Whether you thought the length was right or too much, or there's bits in there that maybe.
The length of the book, the length of
Yeah,
Lansdowne House. Um, is it about 250 pages?
yeah.
And you cover quite
Uh,
a bit of ground in that. Obviously, you cover 40 years.
yeah. I was thinking if was illustrated in graphic, maybe it would need to be just edited down and a bit shorter, but I don't know. I don't
Interesting one to
know.
think about, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, no, actually, I got a very talented neighbour who did the cover for me.
I do
Uh,
really like the cover.
so
Is it based on an actual house?
yes, it is.
Does it look the same as the house, or is it just based on one?
No, it's just based on one. It doesn't look the same.
Mm.
It was basically I went on to Google to find £1 million house that was up for sale with Knight Frank or somebody like that, and found one, and I can't even remember where it was. It was nowhere. It isn't anywhere in Worcestershire,
Right.
and it's been transposed, and it's had a few extra little bits put on it, so nobody can say that's my house, you bugger. But it is based, yeah. It was just I went looking for sales particulars and saw the house for sale with the lawn, and I thought that's it. That's what the house needs to look like. So I gave that to my neighbour and said, "Can you do that for me?" and so he did that. And
Laura said maybe it's a family thing. Laura's the PA, so the child that she works with. She said the white duck in the canal. Are you familiar with the white duck in the canal, Duncan?
no, but I'd like to be.
Well, there you go. That's your next bit of research.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no,
have to
my
ask, while you've been writing, what has been it's my favourite question to ask, and I don't often ask it these days. What have been your most memorable moments so far as an author?
of the actual writing process.
Well, just anything about it. So it could be something like, holding your book for the first time, or it literally could be anything. What has been something memorable for you?
I think actually
That
the
stumped you more than I thought it would.
Yeah, no, because actually, well, I don't know if you are aware, says he, just turning away. I have actually had, I mean, I've self-published this. I have actually had some books published by Pearson. So I'm a Pearson published author, and
Yeah.
but they're business books. They're not novels. And actually,
I am very impressed that you are not at your house and you have all of your books with you.
oh, yeah. I've not got all of them, but I've got a few. So because I mean, this is the irony of part of it, isn't it? And loads of authors will understand this, you know. So that was published by Pearson, and I have I have a French copy, and I haven't got, and the other ones I haven't got with me, but I've got an Arabic copy, an Italian copy, and a Chinese copy, and
Wow.
I still earn bugger all from it. Honestly,
Oh,
got completely turned over by Pearson. I think I couldn't possibly comment. I shouldn't probably say that, but yeah, no, I don't. I'm hardly heard a thing from it. So, but that's not that wasn't really the point. But so actually, seeing those books in Waterstones and in W.H. Smith, that was like wow.
yeah.
And then my mother, I mean, the Pearson one was over 10 years ago, and my mother's 88 now, but she's an absolute dab hand with her iPhone, and she would go into somewhere like Waterstones, and and amongst all that series of books, she would like turn mine around and put it on and take a picture and send me a picture of what she had done. So that was quite funny. When I tell you what, I'm not a terribly emotional person, um, but when I wrote the letter that Shirley wrote to her daughter on, prior to going into the hospice,
Yeah.
I actually cried when I was writing that,
Yeah.
and
It's
that's
not
surprise, and that's
it's not an
surprised.
easy read. I mean, we haven't really talked about Shirley because how do I talk about her? How do I, for the time when it was written, bearing in mind that she's, like I said, the daughter's a similar age to me. Um, it just makes everything that she went through and everything that she fought for and everything that she did to give her child Tina um, some stability, something.
Yeah,
It's just such an emotional thing. I can understand. Yeah, the
yeah,
even for you as the writer, the emotion that must have come through for that. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I guess I was sort of transposing my if what if I was in hospital. I mean, not I haven't got those dark secrets and closets, and my kids that both know who their parents are. but
I'm glad you
but
haven't got those kind of dark secrets because it would be interview over.
but I did think, oh God, I mean, she's in there before her time, and I just thought, God, if I and I just thought, if and one of my associations with the hospice is that my wife's auntie and died in there a few years ago, before her time as well. She was a little bit older than Shirley, but I suddenly thought, God, what if that was me? What if that was me? And not obviously revealing something like that, but how do you put? I got really quite emotional about what if you're in that situation and basically you're saying goodbye to somebody.
Mm,
Must be. I mean, I'm
yeah,
touch wood. I've not really been. I've not had too many of those
touching the
grievous
head, touching the
moments.
shelf. We're touching
Yeah,
wood. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that surprised me. That really surprised me actually
yeah.
about that.
It's a very emotional scene.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
thought,
absolutely is.
and you think, yeah, if you're actually just writing it out, typing it out, that was not going to get to you, but it did, and Yeah,
It would be impossible for it not to. I can
yeah,
feel it now. It would be impossible for it not to have an emotional impact on you,
yeah,
reading it or writing it. Yeah,
yeah,
what a
yeah.
scene! What a scene that really is. Donna's saying they're unusual covers. Did you have a say in them? So the Pearson ones, I'm assuming you didn't have a say in,
No.
but obviously you commissioned the Lansdowne house
Yeah,
cover.
I've done that one, and I've that's the cover for Out of Control, the first one, and
So where is that church?
that's in Droitwich. It's St
Okay.
Augustine's in Droitwich, and there's two reasons for it being there. One is because it sits right above the town, so it's very, very visible from the
All
town
right.
and the
Okay.
canal, everything. So it's very visible, and again that was where um, a key plot development took place, shall we just say. So that's not available in. Actually, Laura, there might be a couple around actually. So talk about that in a bit. But it's available as a. It's been slightly rewritten, slightly re-edited, and it's out on Kindle as Euthanasia because it's about the serial killing of teenagers.
Yeah.
It's really cheery.
Yeah, I suppose that is quite a cheerful subject. Do we really need to worry about what you've been getting up to in your downtime?
Yeah, probably.
There, there's so many aspects of the book that I'd really like to discuss, but I feel like so many of them would be spoilers. Um, let's talk about the difficulty in writing in writing Tina and Michelle because they are sisters with almost completely opposite lives.
Yes.
So was that easy? Was it easy to just say, well, if Michelle, who is the have, and Tina, who is the have not, if Michelle's got this, did you try to keep it polar opposites? Because it's not quite that simple, is it?
No, it's not quite that simple, and I haven't had either of those existence. I've not had the silver spoon, but I'm also very fortunate. I've never had to live hand to mouth, so
Mm.
I don't know either of those. They're not places that I know personally, but
Well, I'm
they.
glad to hear that. I think you've written both of them rather well.
Thank
They
you.
did
Yeah,
feel very realistic.
yeah. Um, I I do. I have a wide range of friends and acquaintances and people. And I know people who live hand to mouth, and I know people who are fabulously wealthy as well. But they're not places I've been, and they're not
Mm.
particularly modelled on anybody. The thing, one of the I guess one of the anchor points for it was there was a TV drama quite a few years ago about again two sisters that it wasn't
Mm.
anything to do with murder or that, but two sisters who I think one had become a famous actress and the other had been stayed at home and they met and found they got nothing in common. Well, that would have
Mm.
been probably easy to write, but of course these two don't meet particularly well. They meet a couple of times, but they don't meet and get to know each other
Yeah,
and realize they've got nothing in common. It doesn't even get to that stage. That would have probably been easier to write had they had those moments together. But I think the difficulty actually was the go between the common denominator between the two of them. I think that was
yeah.
where it was probably difficult, and I'm not even sure I've got that spot on. Because again, I'll be I'm
I think there
open.
was a good balance.
Yeah,
And again, it's not something we can say.
no,
We'll
but it's
talk
quite
about it afterwards.
but it's quite a big divide to cross, isn't it?
Yes, that is a very generous way of putting it. Yeah.
And getting the right person who. Uh, uh, I guess I can be like that because I can relate to people on all scales, and I can do that. But
Mm.
not to do that full time, not to do that in that respect. But yeah, and and I think one of the things when we mentioned the like the skiing, and one of the lines I really quite liked was there was nobody in Avoriaz like him, because he was out of his comfort zone in lots of ways there. But
Yeah, I find it hard to feel sorry for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Quite interesting to see, and it's a very tricky one to discuss. I'm going to move on because we
Yeah.
are running out of time.
Oh
We've only got about
gosh.
7 minutes left.
Okay. Cool.
That's gone really quickly. I want to know why you were the UK's first reality TV person.
Oh, that's going off piste a bit, isn't it?
I'm determined to get this in before the end.
Okay. So I have this affliction. I have this illness called things can be done better, and I usually tell people things can be done better, and it
Right.
and it sometimes gets me into a bit of hot water. I'm just reaching across now. There's another book that I've written as well that is a very thin book called Carry On Complaining, and I tell people you can do a lot better than that. And so there used to be a program called Wish You Were Here. Don't you remember Wish You Were Here growing up?
Of course, yeah.
And
Judy Chalmers.
Judith Chalmers was the main person on it, and then they were bringing all sorts of celebrities to go on
Oh,
holidays.
this was a staple of my childhood.
Okay, so I've been on that one,
Right, okay.
and how that came about is because we were sat. I guess the kids would have been. Our kids would have probably been something like 8 and 10, something like
So,
that.
what year are we looking at? I'm
We're looking.
intrigued to whether I'd
We're,
have seen it.
we're looking about 1998. So,
Oh, right,
90,
okay.
98, 99. Can't remember exactly, actually,
I was
but
watching
um,
before
but
this,
um,
so this should
but
be
um,
interesting.
but unfortunately, it's on YouTube. Not because I didn't put it there. Is they're just I think they're all on YouTube now, like most things. So we sat watching Wish You Were Here as a family, and they are featuring a family holiday in Orlando. I think it was.
Okay.
It was either in the Bahamas or the Caribbean or it was Disneyland. I can't remember. And how did they represent that? They sent, I think it might have been Jamie Theakston. Basically, they sent one single bloke to go and report on a family holiday somewhere. And
Right.
so I wrote to them and said, "You've got to be kidding! You've got to be able to do that better than that. You should have a real family." And they wrote back and said, "Tell us about your family. Would you be interested?" "Oh, we're going to the Caribbean. That would be great," or Disneyland or somewhere. And we got 3 nights in Ostend. But it,
Not that there's anything wrong with Ostend.
it's
Um,
actually it's a lovely little place, and it's not far away, and we've not been back.
Me and Donna are both getting our popcorn out when this finishes. She's
I've
laughing as well.
uh, I've um I've been back to Ostend actually. Back to Ostend a few years ago, but we haven't been back as a family. But it was a great little break, and it was just really interesting to see how they did it, and what it's like. I think it was a 4 minute piece. They record a 4 minute piece, and
Mm.
it takes 2.5 days full on to record a 4 minute piece. So you go to we went to the aquarium. We went on a boat trip up the coast. We went rollerblading along the promenade. You do like rollerblading for an hour or whatever, and it's like 10 seconds of footage.
Mm.
It's just phenomenal how long it takes. So we were there with a cameraman and an audio and a director and audio. One of them was doing two roles. There's two people, and we went and stayed in this nice hotel, and we had a great time. But it wasn't the Caribbean. And at that point, going back that was before Big Brother. It was before anything else. It was a time genuinely where television did not use ordinary people. So
I must have seen this. I'm absolutely going to be going looking. I'm going to pour a glass of something. I'm going to go and look for this and see if I remember watching it because I would have been watching it. 98,
yeah,
I would have been watching it.
and right at the end, because they always finish the piece off somewhere. I don't know how we came up with it, but we decided because you normally write your names on the screen and everything,
Yeah.
and but they got us to do it in the sand. And it was really good. And then panned out. It was really good. There's no drones in those days, of course, but it was just a really good life experience actually because we afterwards we had to go down to we didn't earn anything, we weren't paid anything, but they paid for everything, and
Mm.
they paid for my wife Elaine and I to go down to London to do some over voiceovers afterwards on it, and then right at the end of the series, I can't we I think Anthea Turner was on the show at the time as well. She was doing stuff for them. They
Mm.
invited us to we were the only non television people that got invited to the end of series party as we went down
Oh,
to London
that's
to a party.
exciting.
So it was a life experience for us. So that was interesting.
Did you and Elaine get to meet anyone that you were really excited to meet?
Not really. Not really. Nobody. Sorry, I probably should say Anthea Turner, or he was the other guy that was on quite a lot. Yeah, Martin Roberts, I think, did some as well. I think he did some. I could be wrong, but yeah, no, it was just a nice little experience. So yeah.
I don't know how to feel that Anthea Turner wasn't exciting enough for you back in the 90s. I'd be excited now by Anthea Turner.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
We have got 2 minutes left. Will you give us a recap of Lansdowne House and where to buy it, and tell us again about St Richard's?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start there in case we run out of time. You
I
can.
won't cut you off. If you go over,
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay. You can find out about this very eclectic novel that doesn't really get pigeonholed into anywhere and covers lots of things. It's a murder mystery. It's a envy and revenge novel. It's a circle of life novel. I don't know really what it is, but if you go to, you can go to lansdewnehouse.co.uk. That will take you there. And I don't know if I'm allowed to make a little offer. What I'll say is, if anybody buys it this weekend, I will know where it's come from. Anybody buys it this weekend, I will throw in another book as well. So you'll get 2 books
Very
in the
generous.
post.
Thank
You'll
you.
get 2 books in the post, and 2 quid of it, at least 2 quid, will go to St Richard's Hospice. If anybody in Droitwich buys it, then 4 quid will go, because I don't have to pay postage. I can go and put it through their letterbox, and that's what I did before. So we can do that. But yeah, I mean, it's I say it's a circle of life story. It spans 40 years. It's about 2 sisters who don't know of each other's existence until they're just approaching their 40th birthdays, which are celebrated very differently, and and the fallout from that meeting, and how one is just totally rejected by the other, and what that leads to, and the spiral downwards into some dark deeds and desperate thoughts, and bad attitude, bad actions. But hey, maybe they get away with it.
There are a lot of people it's hard to feel sorry for,
Yeah,
and one that
yeah.
it's impossible not to.
So yeah. I hope it sort of resonates, and people think actually this could happen, And Droitwich Spa is a great little place. We've got the Lido, we've got the Lido pole, we've got an excellent park, we've got the great cafes and bits and bobs around. We've got the canal that goes through it, so it's all real places. The hospice itself, places in Worcester, the restaurants and places are all real. And we go jet setting to Venice and Vegas and Avoriaz and goodness knows where else. So
And now you need to
adds a
go and
little bit
look
of
for the
colour.
white duck.
I do, but I need to find. That's presumably in Worcester. I can Google it anyway. I can Google
Laura, if you've
white
got a
duck.
picture, drop it into the group with my permission. I'd love to see the duck that you have nicknamed Patrick. Thank you so much, Duncan. Thank you to everyone who's joined in, asked questions, and made us giggle. And thank you for you joining us. And best of luck with the fundraising. What a worthy cause, and what a lovely thing to do.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. That was I can't believe an hour's gone by. That was a really enjoyable chat, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
There we go. We are off.